My brothers, do you know the way? The way is aggro. The way is combo. The way is... Good times, good times. Anyway, in this video, I'll be going over a little EDH deck tech for Knuckles, a brand new card from the Sonic Secret Layers. As you know, Knuckles, the Echidna is a 2 and a double red for a 2/4 creature with double strike, trample, and haste that has the ability, whenever one or more creatures you control deal damage to a player, you create a treasure token. He also has a second ability called Treasure Hunter, where at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 3 or more artifacts, you win the game. Now look, I really don't like red cards. Red is like my least favorite color of all time. I dismissed him at first, and before you run away...
Why are you running? Why are you running?
I thought that you could only get maximum 2 treasures per attack with Knuckles because of the 1 or more clause. But it turns out that if you hit 2 different players, he triggers for each player, meaning you could actually get more treasures. I didn't know that. This means that in theory you can get up to 6 treasures per combat this way. You deal damage to 3 different players with 3 double striking creatures, for example. First strike damage happens, you get 3 triggers from Knuckles. Then you deal regular damage, you get 3 more triggers from Knuckles. So this card is actually wild. He's cheap, he's hard to block, he triggers almost all the time. Trample and double strike is nuts if you have ways to pump his power. He's an alternate win condition, he's just super strong. Not to mention that cards like Hellkite Tyrant and Professional Facebreaker were already extremely popular for their effects, and Knuckles just doubles up on those effects for you. So it's with all of this in mind that I decided to build a little deck around him, focusing mainly on the first ability. I didn't want to try to force the Treasure Hunter ability because I don't think you need to. Sure, there might be lists out there that are all in, that try to force the additional combat steps with Knuckles to get more treasures and then play a bunch of the red extra turns and I die cards to trigger the second Knuckles ability at all costs, but that's not what my list is going to be. Personally, I wanted as close to 0 dead cards as possible. I wanted to have the options and the flexibility. Yes, I'm a blue player, and Knuckles and many other red cards are already so great at generating artifacts on their own that you might get to 30 artifacts without trying too hard. But that doesn't mean that I didn't try my best to, have a way to trigger that Treasure Hunter ability as a backdoor option in my list by adding just a few synergistic cards to the mix. So with that said, let's look at the list I came up with. It has everything: ramp, card advantage, looting, tutoring, reanimation, and good old turning angry red little people sideways. Let's have a look. Alright everyone, welcome back. So here we are in the Mox field for the Knuckles deck. I'm going to leave you guys a link in the description of this video to this deck list if you're interested in checking it out. You can come in here, you can import this, you can modify the numbers and move around the cards if you want. I've also separated the deck into different tags, as you can see, so it's basically like a way to subcategorize the deck. I've separated, like, this section of cards are the creatures that directly generate treasures, whereas this section don't necessarily generate treasures but are still really good with the deck. Artifacts that don't fit into any specific category, but yeah, so that's like a way to visually to look at the deck a lot better, and gives you like an idea if you're like maybe oversaturating a specific section or whatnot. But yeah, let's head straight into the cards because I've got a lot of stuff to go over. So first off, the Mana Rocks 10. I like 10% in my decks. In the Shadow, Tails, and Sonic decks that I've made in the past, 10 was a number that I added. Here we have the usual suspects: Soul Ring, Springleaf Drum, Arcane Signet, Fillbar Stone, Fire Diamond, Liquid Metal Torque, Mind Stone, Noble's Purse, Ruby Medallion, and Cursed Mirror. Here I just want to mention a few things. Obviously, since you're playing Mono Red, you don't have access to the best Mana Rocks. Mana Rocks are usually from like the Ravnica era, so like the guilds. You can't even play the key runes. We're kind of constricted in that sense. That's why I have like cards like Liquid Metal Torque. This card isn't great. I don't think the ability is that strong. It doesn't even work with Knuckles since there's like no point in between the end of turn phase and the beginning of your upkeep where you can like tap it to transform the 30th permanent into an artifact to have this ability trigger. That's not something you can do. I needed a 10th one, so that's why it's here. I also want to mention here Noble's Purse. I haven't seen it in many other lists. Yes, it comes to play tapped and it only has 3 coin counters, but it does create treasure tokens, so it works really well with Knuckles. And since you're playing red, you have like different ways to like sacrifice the artifact, discard it, reanimate it if you want. Even the land section allow you to sacrifice artifacts for like card draw and such, so it works really well with Knuckles and I think deserves a spot here. Cursed Mirror, by the way, a clone effect that works for a turn. In this deck list, I don't have that many ways to like reuse the ability, but if you modify the cards around, you can definitely take more advantage of this card. But yeah, it will be like the Mana Rock section of the deck. I didn't want to go too deep there because we have the treasure generator creatures that I really want to talk about next. So first off, we have Generous Plunder. This is a 2 mana 2/2 with Menace that has at the beginning beginning of your upkeep, you may create a treasure token. When you do, target opponent creates a tapped treasure token, and also has a triggered ability when it attacks that deals damage to defending player equal to the number of artifacts they control. So I think this card is outstanding in this deck. It's a 2-drop that curves into Knuckles. It has evasion, so it's harder to block. The treasure ability is also a May ability, so you don't have to give anybody any treasures, but you can also negotiate with which player you want get that treasure, so that you can get a bit of an additional advantage there. And the second ability is actually pretty relevant. If late game, you know, your opponents have 6-7 artifacts, this is an actual threat. This card is very, very good in this deck. Speaking of good cards, Magda, I mean, this card is just insane. It's a 2-mana 2/1 that gives other dwarves +1/+0, which isn't that relevant in this deck, but it also has this ability where whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, you create a treasure token. That's tapped. You don't have to attack. You can use stuff like Springleaf Drum to tap her to generate 1 mana and 1 treasure. And then she has this absurd ability where you can sacrifice 5 artifacts and you can tutor any dragon or any artifact into play. So this obviously plays really well with Knuckles. You're going to get treasures. You're going to sack those treasures. We have this assortment of dragons here. We have this dragon, this one here, this one here, and obviously any one of the artifacts you can tutor up a mere battlefield out of nowhere, tutor up the Mycosynth Lattice to win on the spot. You can sack a few treasures that you have and then play this, and now we have double mana. You can search this up and recoup all of your artifacts. So this card is just really, really strong. Next we have Captain Landry Storm. This is on the other end of the spectrum, not a really strong card. I have her here because she creates treasures when she attacks, but she does suffer from like the Ragavan effect where, you know, she actually has to attack. And yeah, obviously you can like sacrifice the treasures to boost her attack and then maybe give her first strike so you can keep her around, but she's kind of hard to have stick around since she just has 2 toughness and doesn't have evasion. So she's kind of meh, but you know, still a treasure generator creature. We want those in the deck. Next up we have Gadrak. So in many other decks this would be like a 3-mana enchantment where, you know, he doesn't attack unless you have 4 more artifacts. In this deck we're going to have a lot of artifacts, so it will be able to attack. But I like this card here because of the second ability. At the beginning of your end step you create a treasure token for each non-token creature that died this turn. This includes creatures that are not yours, so if you play your cards right and do combat mat, you can like have a lot of people chump block, you lose a few creatures here and there, sacrifice some stuff in mid-combat, and then at the end of turn you get like a bunch of tokens and you can have this creature attack. Next we have Gimli. This is probably one of the weakest cards. He's a 3-mana 1/1 that has this ability that whenever another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a 1/1 counter on him. He has double strike. I really value double strike because of the Knuckles interaction. And he also has this ability where if you deal damage to a player, you create a treasure token so you can double up on the treasures because he has double strike. Unfortunately, this card is kind of weak. You do have to have some type of support where you can like add a bit of strength to him. So any one of the equipments, the swords and stuff really helps boost this card's power level. Next we have Professional Facebreaker. This card is beautiful. 3-mana 2/3 menace, has the Knuckles ability, word for word the same as Knuckles, and then has sacrifice a treasure. You exile the top card of your library, you may play that card this turn. This is basically just like a 1-card engine. You sack a treasure, you get virtual card advantage. Well, how do you get a treasure? Well, you can hit opponents. Well, but what if I don't have any creatures? Well, this card has menace. So it's like a perfectly designed, beautiful card. Probably one of the top 10 cards of this deck. And next we have Swashbuckler Extraordinaire. So this is a 3-mana 2/2 that when it comes into play, you create a treasure token, and whenever you attack, you may sacrifice 1 or more treasures, and if you do, that many target creatures gain double strike until end of turn. In the intro, I'd mentioned that I thought initially that Knuckles only triggered twice maximum per combat, and so because of that I decided to try to find ways to give creatures double strike, and when I saw this card I just couldn't believe it. This card does everything I want. So obviously it comes into play, creates a treasure. Now you can play Knuckles on turn 4, attack with both. This triggers, you can sacrifice the treasure you had lying around to give itself double strike. You're attacking 2 different players. First strike triggers double damage, you get 2 tokens, and then regular damage you get 4. So you had 1, you end up with 4 in that combat. You can give double strike to your creatures. You can, for example, give double strike to this. If you stack the triggers correctly, the creature gets double strike, so your tokens get double strike. Double strike is super important in this deck because it just makes Knuckles really good. So this is also one of the maybe top 10 cards of this list. Next we have Zorn. This is a 3-mana 3/2 that basically gives you the ability to get 1 more treasure for each individual treasure trigger. You get 1 treasure with this, well instead you get 2. You get a treasure with this, instead you get 2. If you were to somehow get 2 treasures at the same time, you only get 3, but for the most part you're going to get treasures individually, so this just doubles up on your treasures. This card is great. Next we have Rose Room Treasure. So this is a 4-mana 4/3. The way this card works is whenever another creature comes into play under your control, you create a treasure token if it's the first or second time the ability resolved. Otherwise, you just blaze any target. This card is pretty strong. It makes essentially all of your creatures just create a treasure. Notice that it doesn't say non-token, so even tokens trigger the ability. You can trigger this ability on each of your opponent's turns, so you can create a bunch more treasures and have like the blaze ability be very relevant. There's also this fun interaction with the Triad where if you play the Triad and attack, you automatically get 2 treasures. Speaking of Gold Dust Triad, this is a 5-mana 4/3 with flying that has Myriad, so whenever this creature attacks, for each opponent that's not the defending player, you may create a token of it, and then it has the static ability where whenever this creature deals damage to a player, you create a treasure token. So it has like the Knuckles effect. You can like give it double strike with this creature, so you have that trigger on the stack. When you attack, you respond to the myriad trigger by giving the creature double strike by sacrificing a treasure. So the creature has double strike, the copies now have double strike, and now you get a bunch of treasures, like 6 treasures. You can also search this up with Magda. It obviously works really well with Knuckles too, since now it's generating a bunch more treasures. So this card is outstanding. Next up, we have Goldspan Dragon. So it's a 5 mana 4/4. It has flying, it has haste. Whenever it attacks or becomes target of a spell, you create a treasure token, and it just randomly gives your treasures the ability to add twice the amount of mana, because why not? This card is just great. It has flying, it has evasion, it's great with Knuckles. It's hard to kill. It puts a treasure on the spot when it attacks. If they target it, you get a treasure. You can tutor it up with Magda. It's just great. Finally, we have Cavern Horde Dragon, just another bomb. 9 mana, but actually a lot less because it costs X less, where X is the greatest number of artifacts each opponent controls. It has flying, trample, and haste for some reason, and it has the triggered ability where whenever it deals damage to a player, you can create a treasure for each artifact that player controls. So this card could be as little as 2 mana and just make you like 7 treasures out of nowhere, 5 treasures, 4, just a bunch of treasures. You can search this up with Magda, attack for 6, and just maybe like recoup those 5 artifacts to tutor up another dragon again. If you give this thing double strike with this card, now you have 2 triggers. So this card is amazing as well. But yeah, that would be the treasure generator creatures. I think these are pretty strong cards. But yeah, heading over to the treasure generator artifact section. So this is a section of cards that are artifacts that generate treasures for us. So first off, we have Diamond Pickaxe. This is a 1 mana indestructible equipment that gives equipped creature +1/+1, and also gives it the ability that whenever it attacks, create a treasure token. So this card I decided to put here. There's a similar one that I think costs 2 and 1 to equip, but it only makes treasures once the creature deals damage. So I thought this was a bit better since it automatically gives you the artifact token once you attack. It makes your double striking creatures a lot more of a threat. I thought this was like a nice artifact to have. Next, we have Collector's Vault. This is a 2 mana artifact that for 2 you can loot, so draw and discard, and then you create a treasure token. If you have excess lands, you can throw them away. If you're looking for a specific card, it allows you to filter through your deck a lot more, and it allows you to essentially just make a treasure token for Knuckles and make use of any excess mana you have at any point in time. Next up, we have Treasure Map. This card allows you to essentially scry for 3 turns, because on the 3rd counter, it transforms into a land that turns all of your treasures into card draw. So now, if you have excess mana, if you have excess treasures, you can actually draw cards with them, and just gives you a bunch of advantage. Not to mention that you actually create 3 treasure tokens once you transform this, so it can draw you 3 cards and scry you 3 times for 2 and 1 mana. This card is awesome. Next up, we have the Reaver Cleaver. So this is Knuckles' Glove. This card obviously has to be here. It gives the equipped creature +1/+1, and oh my god, it has trample as well. I just noticed. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, has trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, create that many treasure tokens. Obviously works awesome with Knuckles, since let's say you're dealing damage with Knuckles. He's a 3/5 with this equipped, right? You deal 3 damage, you trigger Knuckles once, and this once. That's on first strike damage, so you create 3 treasures because of this card, 1 because of Knuckles. That's 4 in total, and then you go to regular damage, trigger this again, you trigger Knuckles again, you get another 4 tokens. This card is great. It works with any big creature because it creates treasures on damage. So this is just awesome. It has to be here, period. Next, we have a Sword of Wealth of Power. So this is a card that gives the equipped creature the ability to create a treasure. That's why it's here. Also, the protection from instants and sorceries is actually kind of relevant, and getting the creature +2/+2, 3 and 2 to equip. This card is okay. It's fine. You can search it up with the Goblin Engineer, for example. I'm going to mention that later, and you can like put it into play later on because it costs 3. But yeah, this card I think is awesome. Speaking of awesome cards, this is also a really good card. Treasure Chest for 3 mana. You can play it, force sacrifice it, and roll a d20. And if you hit 1, you lose 3 life. But otherwise, if you hit 2 to 9, you create 5 treasure tokens, which is great. If you roll a 10 to 19, you gain 3 lives and draw 3 cards. Also awesome. And if you roll a 20, you essentially just tutor an artifact to put it into play. So this card, I really like it. If there are ways to reanimate this artifact in particular, which there are a few in this deck, this card is awesome. You can search it up with the Goblin Engineer. We're going to mention that a bit later. You can reanimate it, you can cheat it into play, and if you roll a 1, that's the worst case scenario. But any other case, this card, I think it just makes up for the possibility of rolling that 1. Next up, we have Artemis Titanic. So it's a 4 mana 7/1 with flying and trample. I have this here because this essentially just gives you like 7 treasures if it deals damage, right? It does have to sacrifice itself after the damage, but once again, there are a few ways to recoup the artifact to make better use of the card if it ever goes to your graveyard and you couldn't use it at all. Next up, we have the treasure generator enchantment section. So this is just a few enchantments that I thought that would make a splash in the deck. We have Spiteful Banditry. So this is an X double red spell that's essentially like an earthquake for creatures, but then it has the static ability ability that whenever one or more creatures your opponent control die, you create a treasure token. It only triggers once per turn, but it makes combat a bit more complicated. If there's opponents that are sacrificing creatures, it still triggers. So it has like this late game effect that adds a bit more value to your side of the board. Next we have Alchemist Talent. This card is great. I could consider this like a second win con or an additional win condition. It's a 4-mana enchantment that creates 2 tap treasures when it enters play, but then for 2 mana you can level it up to make all your treasures basically have the gold span dragon effect. So that's awesome. All of your treasures double up on mana, and for 5 mana you level up to level 3, where whenever you cast a spell, if you spent mana from a treasure to cast it, it deals that much damage to each opponent. So this is a late game just bomb, because if you upgrade this to level 3, which is kind of easy to do since you're making so many treasures and have so much mana, you can like cast this thing for example with a treasure and deal 5 to each opponent. So you cast 2 spells that cost 5 and now you dealt 30 damage in total. So this card is amazing. A Reign of Riches is also a good card, I think. Pretty strong, 5 mana. When it comes into play, you create 2 treasure tokens, so similar to the Alchemist Talent, and then has the first spell you cast each turn that uses mana from a treasure has Cascade. So on your main phase you can make all your spells just double up. I don't have that many instances, so there's not that many ways of doing, you know, the cascading effects on your opponent's turn, but I still think this is an awesome card. Next up we have There and Back Again. So this card it's weird, it doesn't fit very well in this deck. It's a 5 mana saga, so it's the only saga I have on my list. The first ability makes it so the targeted creature can't block for as long as you control this. It's fine if you want to like hit in with Knuckles, if you want to deal damage with a double striking creature. The second lore counter allows you to search up a mountain and put it into play, not even tap, just put it into play and then shuffle. And the third ability creates a 6/6 dragon that when it dies it creates 14 treasures. It's just such a splashy effect. 14 treasures out of nowhere. You're halfway there if you have Knuckles in play. So this is just like a splash card. The abilities don't work that well with the deck, but I still thought you know, creating 14 treasures, I thought that would be good enough. Next up, let's head over to the utility creatures section. So here we have 8 creatures. Let's start off with Goblin Engineer. It's a 2 mana 1/2 that has whenever it enters play, you can search up a library for an artifact and put that card into your graveyard, and then for 1 red, tap and sack an artifact. You can return target artifact with CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this card is awesome. This card allows you to like search up your swords to work like a Stoneforge Mystic in red. You can sacrifice a treasure that you have lying around. You can reanimate this. You can search up the treasure chest, reanimate it by sacrificing a treasure. Then if you activate this and hit the 5 treasure claws, you can keep looping those treasures into this card and keep sacrificing for value. You can search up your treasure map. You can search up any one of your mana rocks. You can search up some of your lands, but obviously that's not the best idea. You can also search up your Academy manufacturer and start like accruing a ton of value. You can even search up your Mycosynth Lattice or your Mere Battlefield if you intend on like reanimating them later on with the Daredes and the Trash for Treasure style effect. So yeah, that's another thing you can do. I think this card is great. It has so much use, so much value, so much utility. Next up we have Academy Manufacturer, also a really strong card. If you would create a clue, food, or treasure, you create all 3. So obviously you can like search this up with Goblin Engineer and put it into play after sacrificing a treasure, and now all your treasures create food and clues, so you start creating a ton of artifacts. You can play this on turn 3, play Knuckles on turn 4 and attack 2 different players, and like we mentioned in the intro, you have first strike damage, you create a treasure with Knuckles, but then you create a food and a clue with this, and then you go to regular damage, you hit both opponents, you trigger Knuckles again, you create 2 treasures, now you create 2 treasures, 2 foods and 2 clues, you have like 9 artifacts. So this card is great. It works really well with many of the other cards in this deck. Next we have Crime Novelist, 3 mana 1/3 that has whenever you sacrifice an artifact, you put a 1/1 counter on it and you add red mana. So now all of your treasures add double mana. You're not going to be sacrificing many other artifacts. There are a few ways to sacrifice more artifacts, like we mentioned in the land section. There are a few like Daredi style effects, but you're not going to be sacrificing artifacts per se that much. So Crime Novelist is going to work mostly with treasures, right? But yeah, I still thought this was a good enough card. Next we have Stridehanger Automaton. So this is a 3 mana 1/4 that gives Thopters you control +1/+1, which doesn't make much sense in this deck, but it has this ability where if you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, you would create that amount plus 1 Thopter. So you create 1 treasure and like a flying 2/2. If you were to create 3 treasures at the same time, you would still create only 1 Thopter, but it's still a nice ability to have. I thought that anything that could resemble this type of effect, the Academy Manufacturer effect in the Knuckles deck, would be good enough to add. Next up we have Rose Cutthroat Raider. So this is a 4 mana 3/2 with first strike that has at the end of combat on your turn, if you attack this turn, create a junk token for each opponent that you attack. So this is a card that already has good stats. It has first strike, and it also allows you to get up to 3 junk token. The junk token being essentially the professional Facebreaker style effect where you can like sacrifice it to exile the top card of your library and you can play that card for this turn. It also has its ability where whenever you sacrifice a junk, you can add mana. So now your junks are essentially treasures as well. So I mean, this card is awesome. Heading over to the next one, we have Already a 5 mana Starfire that basically has its strength be equal to the number of artifacts you control. But the reason I have this here is that whenever it enters play or attacks, you essentially get the trash for treasure effect, where you can sacrifice an artifact to reanimate any artifact you have. Next up, we have Hellkite Tyrant. So this is like a second Knuckles, where if you have 20 or more artifacts at the beginning of your upkeep, you win the game. It also allows you to gain control of all of the artifacts that target player controls when you hit with this. So this card is, I think there's not much to say here. It doesn't have haste, thankfully, but I think there's a few ways to give this card haste. Finally, we have Mere Battlefield. So this is a 7 mana 4/7 that essentially just makes 4 artifacts when it comes into play. It doesn't work as well with many of the other cards of this deck. It's kind of like a standalone card. I still thought it would be fun to have. You can search it up with like Magda and just recoup your artifacts, the artifacts that you sacrifice. It can also deal a lot of damage if you attack. You can maybe clone this with the, what's it called, the Cursed Mirror, and so you can start like generating more creatures. You can maybe like put additional tokens with this card. So I thought this was like an okay card to have. Not to mention you can reanimate it with it already. So it's a really strong card. It used to be a staple back in the day, and you're gonna have the 7 mana. You're eventually going to hit that number because of how many treasures and token and mana you're creating. But yeah, but heading over to the utility artifacts, here I only have 4. Obviously the air shoes, so the Swiftfoot boots and the lightning greaves have to be here. They're just staples. You can search these up with the Goblin Engineer, and now all of your creatures are protected. Your Knuckles is protected. Super strong cards. There's nothing more to say. They give your creatures haste. So this is, for example, we were mentioning the Hellkite Tyrant, so this is a way to give the Hellkite Tyrant haste. But most importantly, it's going to protect your creatures. Idol of Oblivion is a card that I really like. You're never going to be using the second ability where you sacrifice this artifact to create a 10/10. I mean, I don't think you will. You will most likely be using this because this is a 2 mana draw card essentially every turn, because you're going to be creating treasures. You are going to be creating junk tokens. You're going to be creating food tokens with this. You're going to be creating clue tokens. So this is going to be activating more than not. So I thought this card was great. You can also search it up with like Goblin Engineer and put it into play. And finally, we have the Fire Crystal. So this is like a Mana Rock-esque card where it allows your spells to cost 1 less. Your creatures also have haste, so they're better in combat as well. And for 6 mana, you could create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and then you sacrifice it at the beginning of next end step. So with this card, you can create copies of like Hellkite Tyrants to hit multiple players. You can copy stuff like Mere Battlefield. You can also copy some of your dragons, so you can like start stacking these abilities. Copy Professional Face Breakers to duplicate the triggers. So this card is just great to have in this deck. I think this is awesome. Next up, we have Mycosynth Lattice. So this card, I mentioned in the intro, I wanted to have like a backdoor way to trigger the Treasure Hunter ability of Knuckles. This card is kind of a do nothing card. I was worried it just doesn't do anything. If you draw it, it doesn't do anything. If you play it, it's kind of a liability, since now you have 3 turns where any one of your opponents could play like a Wrath effect for artifacts, and now everything is gone on your board. So I initially considered having this alongside Darksteel Forge, which allows you to, you know, have a double protection up, but that would have to have 2 cards be do nothing in the deck, so I wasn't really sure. But eventually I ended up having just this card. It's just a one of fun of something that you can like search up with Magda instant speed. If you have many artifacts in play, you can like search it up with this to like threaten the possibility of reanimating it later. But if you know, if it doesn't do anything, you can still like loot it away. You can discard it. You're not going to be using it too much, and it's a liability. But yeah, that would be that card. Next, heading up to the other WinCon sections. Here we have only 3 cards. So this is the Reckless Fire Weaver, the Hedron Detonator, and the Ingenious Artillerist. This has whenever an artifact you control enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, whereas this has whenever 1 or more artifacts enter play, it deals that much damage to each opponent. This card only deals damage to 1 specific opponent, but it also has the ability where you can tap and sacrifice 2 artifacts to just essentially use like the Professional Facebreaker junk token effect. So these cards, once again, they don't work exceptionally well with the rest of the deck, but if you have this in play and you start playing your Mere Battlespheres, or start making a ton of treasures individually to like trigger the Academy Manufacturer, or if you have your Dragon die, or if you're starting, you know, looping this thing around, these cards can start dealing a ton of damage. Obviously this card is a bit weaker because it can only target 1 opponent, but these cards are pretty good. They look like they don't do much, but the damage can start adding up, especially if you're creating that many tokens. Yeah, that's why I have them in that section. Next up, let's head over to the instant section. So here I only have 4 cards. I have the Great Train Heist. So this is an instant that untaps all of your creatures and gives you an additional combat phase for 4 mana. For 3 mana, creatures you control get +1/+0 and add first strike, and for 2 mana you can get like an additional Knuckles trigger. So this card I really like in this list because it adds that one instance essence of like a double combat effect. So if you have Knuckles out, you can start dealing a lot more damage and creating more tokens. But it's also a card that you can play like for its second ability and for its third ability. And it's not just well, I'm gonna get an extra combat step to make Knuckles better. It also gives you like a lot of leeway when it comes to combat. If you're trying to block, you can, you know, use your creatures defensively to like give them first strike and deal with your opponent's creatures. And even for like 2 mana, you can use like this Knuckles effect for once, where you can like attack one player with 3 creatures and create 3 treasure tokens. They do come into play tapped, but still this card is very flexible. I like it a lot more than the double the combat effect. Next we have Chaos Warp. So this is like the only actual removal I have. It deals with annoying permanents, so this card is great to have. Next we have Unexpected Windfall, another instant that allows you to like filter through your deck. It's awesome because you get to draw 2 cards and create 2 treasure tokens. Obviously the cost is you need to discard a card, but you can discard this, you know, the stuff that you don't want to have in your hand. Magnificent Lattice, for example. If you want to reanimate your Mirror's Battle Spheres or whatever with the Trash for Treasure effect, you can do that as well. So it's like a good card. Creates 2 treasures, draw 2 cards, filters. It's instant, it's great. It has Knuckles on it. Next we have Bottle Cap Blast, a 5 mana instant that has Improvise, so you can tap your creatures to pay 1 less, and it deals 5 damage to any target, and then excess damage essentially turns into tapped treasure tokens. You can like deal 5 damage to a 1 toughness creature and out of nowhere have +4 artifacts to play a 10 mana spell on the next turn or something. So this card is awesome. I think this it deserves a spot here. Next, heading up to the sorcery section, we have 1 Game Changer list card, Gamble, Tutor for red. You can search up any card you want, and obviously you run the risk of discarding it, but if you're searching up an artifact, for example, you know you might be able to like reanimate it later on with like Goblin Engineer, the Trash for Treasure effects in the Durettis, or you can like search up any card that you think, you know, might stick around, so you can like play to your odds. I mean, it's what we have in red, right? Because red doesn't have that many tutor effects, right? Next we have Hell to Pay. So this is like an X spell, a blaze style effect that only targets creatures, but it's essentially the same as the Bottle Cap Blast, where excess damage turns into tapped treasure tokens. So if you have a turn where you have nothing else to do, you can like tap 6, 7, 8 mana and get like 3 treasures and deal with like a 7 drop or any combination in between. And next I'm going to be mentioning Seize the Spoils and Pilot's Pillage essentially at the same time. These are the exact same cards with the difference that this one costs 4, this one costs 3, this one creates 1 treasure, and this one creates 2. So this is basically like an Unexpected Windfall sorcery versions. Having like 3 of these effects I thought was nice. Next we have Seize the Spotlight. It's an effect that reads, each opponent chooses Fame or Fortune. For each player who chooses Fame, you basically get to like active aggression them, and for each player who chooses Fortune, you get to draw a card and create a treasure token. So in this specific list, I don't have like ways to make use of those creatures that you steal, so there are not that many ways to like sacrifice creatures that you grab from your opponent, but it's still good in this deck because you can like negotiate with players. Maybe you can bluff that you have the sacrifice ability so that your opponent gives you the card draw and the treasures, and even if they don't, even if they give you the creature, now you can swing with your team. And if you have Knuckles or the professional Facebreaker style effects, you can start accruing more treasures and keeping like the party going, right? Next we have Trash for Treasures. This effect is awesome, it's great. So this is like the Duretti effect, right? It's a sorcery that reads, as an additional cost to cast this card, you sacrifice an artifact and then you can reanimate an artifact from your graveyard to play. So obviously this works well with stuff like Magnificent Lattice, any one of your artifacts that you maybe gambled away if you ended up discarding it, or stuff that died, or stuff that, you know, you searched up with Goblin Engineer but someone then killed the Goblin Engineer so you couldn't get the card into play. So it works really well. I love this style effect in this deck. Next we have Brass's Bounty. So this is a 7 mana spell. For each land you control, you create a treasure token. They come into play untapped. You deal a bunch of damage with these creatures. You can essentially like double up your mana with your dragon effects. You can you know, just use that mana on that turn if you want. This card is awesome. Next we have Blasphemous Act. Has to be in every red deck, I think. I mean, it's a 1 mana Wrath. Yeah, this card is great. It's a staple in red decks. I think it's probably the only red card that you would have in every deck. I don't see why you wouldn't have it. It's just 1 mana card. Heading over to the Planeswalker section, so we have Duretti. I wanted to have the Trash for Treasure effect again in a Planeswalker that also kind of works with the deck. The +2 allows you to loot cards away. The -10 allows you to get this emblem where any one of your artifacts, if they get destroyed, they come back into play, so you can like have this like Darksteel Forge-esque effect. So I thought this was a good card to have. Heading over to the land section, just rounding everything up here, we have Castle Embereth. So this is a card that gives +1/+0 to all of your creatures. They don't necessarily have to be attacking or anything. It also gives you like a bit better rate on your first striking a double striking creature, so it's a bit better with Knuckles and some of the other creatures. We have 1 Darksteel Citadel from Mori Vault. So this is a card that for 4 mana is just like an impulse style card in red, just great. Next, Foundport, another awesome card. It creates treasures for 5 mana. You can sacrifice the treasures to draw cards. You can create creatures. So now your tokens trigger like your your dudes, right? You can trigger this, you can trigger this card. Just overall, just great. Next we have like a 1 Grey Furnace, an additional artifact land I want to have. Mines of Moria, this card is great as well. 4 mana, exile 3 cards from your graveyard, and you could create 2 treasure tokens. So now you're basically making use of your graveyard as well. You're not just looting and searching up artifacts and tutoring and filtering through your deck. You're also making use of everything that you discarded that you don't want, for example, additional lands, and you can turn those into treasure tokens that come into play untapped. It's an awesome card. Scene of the Crime, this is an artifact land that's basically just a clue, right? It's a land that comes to play tapped. It's an artifact land for Knuckles, and you could pay 2 to sack it to draw a card. So you can like sacrifice this if you want with the Daretti style effects to reanimate other artifacts. So I thought this was an okay card. Next we have the Gold Saucer, another just great card. I mean, for 2 mana and tap, you can flip a coin. If you win the flip, you create a treasure token. So anytime you have excess mana, you can flip a coin and see if you get an additional treasure. And for 3 and tap, you can stack 2 artifacts and you can just draw a card. So maybe you want to sacrifice, you know, this card if you don't need it anymore. You know, the Nobles perk we mentioned before, if it runs out of tokens, or maybe like the Fire Diamond, if you think it's not worth it anymore, you can turn those cards into actual cards, right? So now you have like all this looting, you have tutoring, you have reanimating, you have like ramping, you have you know, you make use of your graveyard, you're just firing on all cylinders. Next up we have the Mycosynth Garden. So this card is kind of strange, it doesn't do that much, but you know, you can use it to like copy other artifacts, basically like a clone effect on a land. I thought it would be nice. Next, Treasure Vault. So this card is like another way to like instantly win with Knuckles. If you have a lot of excess mana, you're missing a few treasures, you can like tap maybe 8 or 10 mana that you have lying around and just create 5 treasures out of nowhere, and you can like win with Knuckles. So I thought this was a great card to have, right? And finally we have War Room. This card is just another way to draw cards in red. I mean, you pay 4, you pay 1 life, you draw a card. Just awesome. It rounds up the 37th land, and I think it just makes the deck look a lot better, so it gives you a more like a more advantage. But yeah, that would be the Knuckles deck. I hope that you guys enjoyed. I'm going to leave you guys a link, as I mentioned, to this list down below. If you like the video, just leave me in the comment section what you think of the deck. And yeah, that would be it. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you later.